Iran might just have the power to topple the entire US empire, and all they have to do is keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. And I'm not even talking keeping it closed forever. No, I am talking about keeping it closed just long enough for the eventual backlash that is coming down the pipe to be big enough to lead to a domino effect of the entire empire falling apart, which may not be all that much more time. In fact, they may have been able to keep it closed for long enough that that is already going to be the result of all of this. This is because of just how badly the Trump administration has handled the entire war. You see, they didn't expect Iran to close the strait, so they had no plan to account for rising gas prices, which is why we were seeing the price at the pump skyrocket over the course of just a week or two. But if you're an American, you may have noticed that despite the fact that crude oil is still getting more and more expensive, the price at the pump has leveled off. But how could that happen? If it costs more to make the gasoline that we all use, then why is the price staying the same? Well, it's basically because the Trump administration is printing money in order to subsidize the price at the pump. Their goal is to keep it low enough for long enough that they could get the strait open again before there's a major price shock, in hopes of kind of smoothing it over and then slowly bringing it back down. But we have to ask ourselves, why is a government that is too poor to be able to afford its citizens health care or to fix our roads and bridges able to print money infinitely to manipulate gas prices? Well, that's primarily because of what's called the petrodollar. Basically, the entire globe trades oil in dollars, which means that everyone has to have dollars on hand in order to keep the entire global economy running. However, the strait being closed interrupts that in a few key ways. First of all, the value of the dollar is largely tied to how much oil countries are able to buy with it. The strait being closed means that 20% of the world's oil is no longer able to be purchased with any currency, which in very simplified terms means that if the strait remains closed long enough for people to feel that they are no longer able to purchase that oil with their dollars, those dollars lose in their minds about 20% of their value, which means your dollars lose about 20% of their value. And now these are very rough numbers, but you get the idea. Now, what do you think happens to the entire US economy when everyone has 20% less dollars? Ask yourself, how is your life going to work if you had 20% less buying power? Are you able to keep your home? Are you able to feed your family? Are you able to maintain your bills? But here's the thing, it is worse than that 20%. Because what Iran is also saying is that you can trade some oil through the Strait of Hormuz. You just have to pay in Chinese yuan, effectively creating the petroyuan, which is now competing against the petrodollar. The petrodollar, which used to have no competition. So now all those countries who maintain dollars in reserve now want to sell those dollars for some amount of Chinese yuan, which means all those dollars that were being held get flushed back into the world economy, which brings the value of all of those dollars down even further. Depending on how far and how long Iran takes this, that effect only gets worse as the market starts to realize, hey, we need to adjust for the reality on the ground, not the way things always have worked. So now instead of just all of your money losing 20% of its value, it's looking at 25, 30, even higher. But here's the thing, even at that point, that crisis is still manageable. Or at least it would be if you were anyone other than Donald Trump. Because what the United States used to have is allies and trade partners that span the entire globe. Countries that saw aligning their interest with ours as a ticket to safety, prosperity, and security. And if you maintain great relationships with all of those allies and all of those trade partners, well, guess what? All of those partnerships can ride you through this storm pretty well. All you have to say is, hey, maintain the value of the petrodollar for us, and we'll give you a cookie or some shit. A cookie in this example being a fuck ton of bombs or something. or a good deal on corn or whatever the fuck we're exporting. The point is, the United States used to have a position that could weather the storm of having the Strait of Hormuz closed, which is why Iran never just did that in the first place, even though we have always been adversarial. However, who has Donald Trump spent the last decade of American politics alienating at every step? It's our allies and our trade partners. You want to put blanket tariffs on the entire fucking globe and expect them to just be happy about that, especially when they have to trade through the United States for almost everything. So now all our trade partners are looking at the option of the petroyuan and going, hey, that might actually be the more secure route for us. Maybe we need to be making trade deals with China or India or Russia. Canada, for instance, made a giant new trade deal with India, basically cutting the US out of the loop. Now, if you're a fucking meathead, you may still be sitting there thinking, hey, we still have military might. Can't we just force everyone to do whatever the fuck we want? The answer to that, again, would have been a maybe when we still had allies that trusted us militarily. But once again, Trump threatened to attack NATO, the strongest alliance that we are a part of. And every single one of those countries are now preparing to fight us off in case we attack. Which means they're probably not too keen on fighting a pointless war where they gain nothing other than the old status quo of us being in charge. But then finally, you might be thinking, hey, if all of this damage is going to take place, why don't we go and just take over Iran? And the answer, again, is we fucking can't. Because sure, if you took all of the US's military might and put it in some giant field across from all of Iran's military might, that would probably be a pretty lopsided battle and the US would win pretty handily. But here's the thing, the grand majority of our military is scattered around the entire globe, maintaining all of these alliances and trade deals that we have been blowing up left and right. And as soon as we aren't there to police this shit anymore, it all goes away. Which means everything that was underpinning our economy, which underpinned our military, disappears with it. And suddenly the US military isn't so capable anymore. But again, maybe the US still could have won if the American people wanted to really buckle down and mobilize our entire country to fight Iran. But right now, I would say most of the country is buckling down and getting ready to fight us, a revolution, a civil war. Almost every single person I talk to expresses how they are much more willing to fight our own government than the government of Iran. Which means, again, they don't have the ability to muster the forces they need to beat Iran and open the strait by force without collapsing the entire fucking government. Which means that the US has no moves left. And do you know what they call having no more available moves in chess? Checkmate, motherfucker.